Get my 6. What a beautiful backdrop we have here today. I'm out for a walk along a beautiful old country road here in Central Virginia. Thanking God as I feel grateful for being allowed to live here. This is all around me, anywhere I go. I just live in a very beautiful part of the world, and I'm so grateful. I've been to some places that aren't so pretty, but I'll put a footnote in there. Despite having been in combat zones, war zones, and living within what would be called, well, some not so pleasant places, I was always able to find beautiful people and beautiful locations within some of those not so pretty places. I see a tree here that's got... I'm actually keeping my eyes open for honeybee swarms too while I'm out and about. I have not yet seen a honeybee on our property or close by, but we've got some boxes out and I'm trying to catch some wild swarms. So if I see a freaking queen cell along this beautiful country road, as long as it's not on somebody's private property, I'm coming out with a trap and I'm going to catch it. I don't care how many times I get stung. All right, so I know you're enjoying the scenery, but I know you're here for the story, and I'm going to get right to it. Somebody commented in one of my wife's videos over on her channel, Life with Dearly. If you've not subscribed, go over there and subscribe. She's got some great videos. That's where we do, by the way, our homesteading stuff now, because this channel pretty much, as you know, has become about story time. But somebody commented on a video where they saw me digging up like a 7 feet tall eastern red cedar to transfer somewhere on our property a few days ago. They said, wait a minute, weren't you just in the hospital like yesterday? Didn't you just get out of the hospital? Should you really be doing that so soon? Well, 1 week ago today, as of this recording, I was in the hospital. We know that story. I'm not going to beat that dead horse. But yeah, it's been a week that I've been out. Not only have I been moving trees, gardening, moving firewood around. I've not split any yet just because I haven't needed to. And I've been running. I'm back to running every day now, 3 miles a day. This is what reminded me of the story. It has to do with recovery time, recovery from illness. And here's where we're getting the questions. Come on now, Crazy Lake, what you talking about this time? Well, I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to give you any medical advice. I'm not qualified to do so. But I'm going to tell you what happened to me. So, the first time I ever took my son to a doctor, my son's first doctor appointment, it was to see a witch doctor, okay? I remember laughing all the way up the mountainside. You remember recently I told a story about a very peculiar mountain where we lived in the Philippines, out in the provinces. Had a lot of strange things on that mountain. People that didn't quite look like people. A lot of odd events that took place that was blamed or that were blamed upon a local communist group of holdouts supposedly living in caves, though these people were never found. This is where the witch doctor lived, on this same mountain, okay? She lived about halfway up the mountain, and this was the mountain where Miss Dearly and I would go practice our horticulture. We would grow gardens up there, and we would scour through the forest, and we would take wild edibles. We lived off of eating wild edibles for a considerable period of time over there because we had no money. Well, our son was sick. He was about a year old. He developed what I would call hives. Looked like some sort of hives, like a rash all over his body, and like a wheezing, like a respiratory. I was afraid he might have had pneumonia. We were a 5-hour vehicle ride away from anything that would even be considered to be a hospital. We were in the middle of nowhere. And, you know, I'm an American, born, raised, grew up in America. It's my MO is, you know, your kid gets sick, you go to the doctor. You don't even ask questions because you just don't take that chance. Well, Dearly's mother, Daniel's grandmother, Lola, she's known there. Lolo was the grandfather. Tried every jungle remedy she knew, which root, which plant or whatever. Nothing was working. And so Dearly's mother said, you've got to go see the witch doctor, okay? So I told Dearly, that's nuts. I'm not taking my son to a witch doctor. We need to get him to a hospital. And she said, oh, okay, so you have the means for us to travel 5 hours? to a hospital, you have the money to pay. And that's one of the big differences between the countries. Here in the U.S., if you get sick, especially if you have an emergency, you go to the doctor, you go to the hospital, you get treated, period. You don't have money, you don't have health insurance, you get treated, period. You might have to file bankruptcy later because you can't afford to pay the bills, but you're not just left alone and let to die. Ironically, last week when I was in the ER, they had a sign posted by my bed which stated that, and I had my wife get a picture of that on this phone. Her mind was blown, because the way it works in the Philippines, you go in for treatment, they say, okay, well, this is what we think's wrong, it's going to cost this much for us to treat it, pay us. You don't have the money for payment, they don't treat you. Just one of the harsh realities of the way 80% of the rest of the world lives, because it's not exclusive to the Philippines. It's like that everywhere once you leave the U.S., Canada, and Europe, okay? We could probably say in just about every non-Western nation. That's the reality of the rest of the world. It's terrifying. Yeah, you just... If you read my books, I write about a lot of the realities of the stuff in there, stuff that I can't say on social media. Another reality of the world. Okay? I see a butterfly. First one of its type for the year. I'll see if I can get on camera. It's a beautiful stream, but we're going to go over here and see if we can see this beautiful butterfly. There it goes. It flew away. Well, so anyway, I said, well, okay, I don't have any money. We don't have the means to get there. So we went up to see the witch doctor. We go up. This woman, she was older, probably old enough to be my mother. I would say she's a baby boomer. If she's still alive today, which she probably is, she's probably 70. This would have been about 10 years ago, so she was about 60, because our son's 10 now. Maybe it was 9 years ago. So she's talking to Dearly. At the time, I didn't speak Visayan. I didn't understand what they were saying. And she brings out a coconut husk, like half a coconut husk. She puts a bunch of dried up something in it. And she lights it on fire and smoke comes up. She inhales this stuff, this certain mixture, this certain concoction, and she blows it into my son's face slowly so that he breathes this smoke. Make sure you're getting my 6 as I tell you this tale. So he's inhaling this stuff. He coughs a little bit. Once he coughs, that confirms to this woman that he has indeed taken the smoke into his lungs. She stops. I saw it too. I'm not looking directly into the camera because this is one of my unique research methods. To anybody new to the channel, this is how we find him, her, it, or they in these videos. I don't look. I let you look. That's why I say get my 6, which is military terminology for watch my back. Timestamp it if you saw it as well, ducking behind that tree. Okay? Got a glimpse with my peripheral vision. So anyway, I said something. I don't remember exactly what it was. I'm sure I was scoffing. I was being disrespectful because I didn't believe in this hocus pocus black magic stuff, right? She looks at me and in perfect English, she says, "You are not a believer." I said, yeah, I guess I'm not. And she twirled her finger around the smoke coming up from the coconut. And this smoke turned into the form of a beautiful belly dancer woman shaking her belly as it went up and dissipated. And she said, "You believe now?" And I said, "Well, how long have you been practicing that trick?" And I said, "And by the way, how come you speak such good English?" She says, "My English is better than yours. I was taught properly." I was like, "Oh, okay." But hey, I disrespected her, right? She explains to me that her husband was a Japanese medic. He was actually a doctor in Japan before the Second World War. He was a medic for the Japanese army during the Second World War. And he taught her to speak really good English. And I said, well, the math isn't making sense here. You say your husband, that would have been World War II generation. He would have been 25 or 30 years older than you. And you're in the Philippines. You're Filipina. And she said, you forget you're in Asia. Do you not? And what she meant by that was, in Eastern cultures, one of the most attractive things about men is stability and security and the ability to provide. So it's not uncommon to see women with much older men who are already established. They don't care about the hot rods and the muscles over there. They care about, can you provide for me and any children that we have? So I was reminded, and I thought, okay, makes sense, but did you go to Japan with this guy? Did you meet during the war, and weren't they the bad guys? And she said, when you have time, come see me. When you want to have a conversation with somebody in English, remember where I live and we'll talk. I thought, okay. And whatever. I'm thinking the woman's a kook. I don't want to come spend any time with her. But after about a year of being around no one that spoke English, now I'd learned their language to a degree to where I could get around comfortably, and I knew what was being said about me, and that kept me safe. But I couldn't really have a conversation with anybody in Visayan. So I went back to see that woman, and I got an amazing story from her. The story is that her husband, who was in the Japanese army, who was a medic and an actual doctor in Japan before the war, was in Mindanao, the southernmost island of the Philippines, during the Second World War, and she told me that he was forced, by way of his chain of command, to do some pretty hideous things to POWs, American GIs and Filipino Army POWs, prisoners of war, that he could not live with. He chose to disobey those orders after he had done enough of these terrible things, of which she never gave me details. She told me he'd never share those details with her because he was afraid of how she might view him through her eyes if she knew some of the things he had done. And so I probably didn't want to know the details anyway. I've read a lot of the history books. I know they did some pretty gruesome stuff. So he disobeyed direct orders. I'm breathing a little hard while I'm talking because I'm starting to go uphill. See, look. What a beautiful field over here. Give my other arm a break. The stream's gone. The stream's over here now. So he eventually went AWOL. He fled. He went into the jungles of the Philippines because since he disobeyed direct orders during a time of war, that, my friends, is called treason, and it's punishable by death. And if you don't think the Japanese Imperial Army wasn't executing treasonous people in their ranks at the time, then you're thinking wrong, okay? So he escapes into the jungles. She told me she was not his first wife. The age difference thing is because the first lady that he met and took as a wife there would eventually pass away. And when she did meet him and start dating him, he was up there in years, considerably older. And he was drawn to her because she told me she was a clairvoyant or a psychic or a medium, something along these lines. They use a different word over there, and I can't remember the word. But she used those words in English to describe to me what it was she was getting at. So she said her husband always feared the afterlife. He was a very spiritual man. He was a superstitious man, both superstitious and spiritual. And he was afraid of what the afterlife might hold for him because of some of the hideous things he had done against his will due to direct orders. So she always told him that she had a feeling that if he were to do kind and good things throughout life, which he did, he practiced medicine to the best of his ability with limited means for the rest of his life while he was there in the jungle. If somebody got sick, nobody could afford to go into the city 5 hours away to see a doctor. He treated them, and he did it for free. He never took payment. You know, people would give him food in exchange, bananas, stuff they grew, but never any currency, no money. So she told him, as long as you focus on continuing to do these good things in the afterlife, you'll have nothing to fear. And as a medium, I can help you continue to help people here. You can work through me when you're gone. So this is kind of like the pact they had. This is what they talked about in his final years. And she told me that basically I'd witnessed this happen with my son the year before when we'd taken him there when he was sick. And by the way, whatever it was that she did, whatever that smoke was, whatever that concoction with those herbs, he was healed. He went home and took like a major nap that afternoon, like a 3-hour-long nap, sweated profusely, and when he woke up, the rash was gone, what looked like hives, the fever, the wheezing, it was all gone. He was 100% better. Well, that was her story, and she was sticking to it. I would go back and see her a couple of times over the course of the next year while we lived in that particular location. But we would move. We had a series of a couple moves there, a couple for safety issues, a couple kidnapping attempts for ransom on our son's life. We had to, especially in that last year, just before I came back to the U.S. and I brought my family with me. After we had moved to the next place we moved to, was another province, and I'm intentionally not saying names of these places, not so that you can't fact check me, but because we still have family over there and I don't want to put anybody in danger, okay? Read my books. Read Isle of Capri, my novel Isle of Capri. You can get it on Amazon, print or Kindle. The link is in the description box below. Let me tell you, there's more to that book that is fact and fiction, like almost all of it. So, moved away, a couple hours away. I contracted dengue fever. It's like malaria's evil first cousin. 1,000 children alone die on the island we lived on every year from dengue. And it's not so much because of dengue itself, but it's because they can't afford the treatment. It would cost maybe $100 to treat it. They didn't have the money, so they die. It's a cruel part of the way 80% of the rest of the world's population lives, okay? So I contract dengue. I go to the hospital. I also had pneumonia on top of the dengue, I would find out. And while I was laying in that hospital bed there, by the way, I want to point out, I finished the last 2 chapters of Isle of Capri because I was afraid I was going to die, and I wanted to at least have that book written so it could be published posthumous, posthumorous, after the terrible joke I probably just tried to make out of that. So I had a wonderful doctor, a wonderful lady, about 40 years old, who had gone to medical school in the United States. She did not refuse me from treatment. I didn't have the money, but I had a way of getting it over the next few days. She let me into the hospital. She told the hospital manager she would pay my bill if I couldn't. Got to be careful. Here's a goat crossing. This is cute, isn't it? It says goat crossing. And up here we have a bunch of goats. Can you see them? So anyway, she took care of me, but she told me, she said, look, it takes a full 5 years to recover from dengue fever. You're more susceptible to getting it again. And if you do, you probably will die. Don't overexert yourself, not just for the next couple of weeks after you get out of the hospital, but probably for the next 5 years. Well, that didn't sit well with me because I'm not somebody that sits around on the couch eating potato chips, drinking some domestic light beer, watching headline news. I'm a doer. I go outside and play. I don't care. I will spend all day on my property outside, moving trees, working in the garden, splitting the firewood, running, mountain biking, walking down a beautiful country road like this here in Central Virginia because it's so gorgeous. Again, I thank my higher power that I'm fortunate enough to get to live here. Beautiful place. No one's trying to kidnap me or kill me and kidnap my kid for ransom. It's wonderful. I love it. So I had an idea. About a week after I got out of the hospital, and I learned that this doctor, go figure, was right with her medical, her what she told me. I wasn't superhuman despite my fast, awesome athletic background, state champion, college track guy on scholarship, hoo-ah, soldier in the Army, airborne infantryman, all this stuff. I could barely walk. It's like I would get winded if I went 100 feet. I remembered the witch doctor on that mountain. So I told Dearly, I said, honey, let's go see your parents. Let's just go spend a weekend at your parents' place. So we did. We went back. They were happy to see Daniel and Dearly and me. They liked me. We couldn't really have much of a conversation because they don't speak much English and my Visayan was still limited at the time. But one day I went out and I went to see the witch doctor. I told her what happened. I told her about the dengue, about the pneumonia. And she said, oh, so now that you need my services, now that you need my help, you're willing to believe me. I said, ma'am, I'm willing to give it a try. I said, I'm a doer. Told her what I just told you. I can't sit around idly and do nothing. Even in the Philippines, we were gardening. We were growing stuff in our food. We had no money. That's how we ate. So she mixed some stuff together, her little concoction in her half coconut husk shell. She lit this fire and she breathed in the smoke and she blew it into my face and I inhaled it. And we did that a few times and I coughed. Oh, wow, these are beautiful. Look at this. Aren't these beautiful? I might be wrong with those. Well, I was going to say Mayflowers, but no way, it's only March. Wow, they're everywhere over here. Check this out. They're all over the hillside. Isn't that absolutely beautiful? Beautiful white flowers. So anyway, I coughed. She said, "You're fine, you're good to go." I said, "So should I take it easy for a few days?" And she said, "You didn't come here to take it easy, did you?" I'm like, "No." She said, "Go with God. Go with God's speed. You go run a marathon if you want." Well, I didn't go run a marathon. I wasn't in shape to run a marathon. But when I left, I felt 100%. And I was able to get back into it. And I jogged over there, but I mostly rode a bike. I had a mountain bike that I got around on. It was a 21 speed. And I would ride that thing 10 or 12 miles a day through the provinces, through the various villages and stuff. I was able to start doing that again immediately. And I felt as if I'd never had dengue fever. Felt as if I'd never had pneumonia, either one. And now here's the strange thing. All these years later, like the commenter said, "Didn't you just get out of the hospital? Weren't you laying in a hospital bed yesterday and now you're outside transferring trees?" And I'm running 3 miles a day. It's been less than a week and I'm already back to doing everything. Some people would say, those of us in the West, those of us who use logic over superstition, might say, "Well, you know, Crazy Lake, you are pretty fit. You don't do drugs or use tobacco or, you know, intake any of this nasty stuff that you shouldn't be putting in your body. You eat pretty healthy and you exercise daily and you're active. That's why you're getting around so well. Day out of the hospital, you're back to it." Well, sure, I'm sure there's something to that, right? But could there be more? Could it be that what she did for me all those years ago has lasted and perhaps, potentially, the rest of my life, though I can't say that I don't have to worry about not getting sick or not getting injured because I have gotten sick and I have gotten injured since that time. But if I think back on those times I have been sick and I have been injured, I do have to admit that once I'm over it like 100%, really, really quickly, like as in immediately. So that's my story for today. Took me about 1.5 miles to tell it. So I'm going to stop recording and turn around and go 1.5 miles back. And there's a 3-mile walk on top of my already 3-mile run. And quite a bit of horticulture done today with the beautiful Bride Dearly, a.k.a. Giggly Girl. So if you like that story, come back for more next time here at Homesteading Off the Grid. And whatever the hell this channel is about.